Good morning, y'all. It's another day out in the shop, and today we're going to start the process of flushing the coolant system on this Cherokee of mine. So to give you the backstory, I bought this Cherokee about a year and a half ago, and when I bought it, it was overheating on the way home. Not bad enough to hurt anything, but so I got it home, and I have replaced everything in the cooling system on this vehicle. Water pump, thermostat housing, radiator, all the hoses, pretty much everything that's got to do with the cooling system. Flushed it, filled it back up. So at the present time, it's not necessarily overheating, but it is, on a hot day, it does get higher than I'd like it to. It gets above 210 and up to around 225. So the only thing left is to try to get some rust out of the cooling system. So when I bought this, the guy had it sitting for a couple of years, and he got it running, and I bought it, so I flushed it out again, and it was pretty dirty then. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this stuff here, Thermocure, made by Evapo-Rust, in there, and let it run in there for about a week, and then we'll flush the system, and we'll put this in there and run it for an hour or two and flush it again, which we'll be doing that part next weekend, obviously. So this stuff made by Evapocure, or I'm sorry, it's Thermocure made by Evapo-Rust. Now I've been using Evapo-Rust for a long time because I use it to clean up my machine tool cutters and stuff. I buy a lot of them, well, I buy all of them used, and not necessarily used, but they're, what I buy is that I go to auctions and I buy brand new ones that are, you know, 50 years old. They've been sitting on a shelf somewhere, and so they get rusty, and then you use that Evapo-Rust on them, and it'll make them look brand new again. So show you what I'm talking about real quick. Move all this around. So I bought all these mill cutters, and they were completely covered in rust, and you can see now how nice and clean they are. And that was literally no scrubbing, nothing. You just soaked them in there, and it cleaned them right up. So you can see they're all nice and rust free now. So I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is go ahead and use this stuff in the, I've seen people report about these using this Evapo-Rust Thermocure. So what it does is when you put it in the radiator, it turns black. As it reacts with the rust, it'll turn black. So next weekend we should have a bunch of nasty black stuff to drain out of this cooling system and flush it all out again, and hopefully that'll bring us back down to where I would like it to be, which is 210, like it's supposed to be. Since I've already replaced everything in the cooling system, and it's all factory parts, new fan, fan clutch, the whole 9 yards, everything's brand new, and it's still getting up around 225. Now granted, it's been really hot lately, but it shouldn't be getting up that high, not just driving down the road. That's not even pulling a trailer or anything. So we will go ahead, I'm going to put that stuff in the radiator, and then we'll come back next weekend and we'll flush the radiator and clean it all out, and hopefully that'll help us out. So through the magic of video, it's now next weekend. All right, y'all, it's been a week. We've been running this Thermocure in the coolant for a week now. That stuff's made by the same people that make Evapo Rust. And now I'm fixing to open the drain and start draining the coolant system. And what we should see is the coolant should be pretty much black. That Evapo Rust, when it reacts with rust, it turns black, and I don't know if it eats the rust or chemically reacts. It gets rid of the rust. And so we're going to drain the radiator, and then we'll hook our hose up on our old coolant flush fitting there and start flushing the system. Once we get the system flushed where it's running clear water out, then we're going to put this in there, this cooling system cleaner, and we'll run up to the parts store and get a bunch of antifreeze and let that cleaner roll through the system. Once we get back, we'll let it cool back off again and drain and flush it again, and fill it back up with coolant. So I can already tell you that this Evapo Rust, this Thermocure, it works, because I really wasn't having an overheating issue so much as it was just on a regular day up to 90-95 degrees. This thing runs great, never gets over 210. But when you get up in the 90s and 100 degrees, then it starts to really get on up there. It was peaking out at probably 225, 235, somewhere in there. And that's just a little warmer than I'd like it to be. And I knew that there was some rust in the system from the previous owner having left it sit. And I flushed the system before, but I didn't put anything in it to get rid of the rust. So now we're doing that. But I know this week, driving it with the Thermocure in it, it dropped the peak down to about 215, 220, which is pretty normal when it's over 100 degrees in one of these, especially down here in the southeast, because it's so humid. Heat exchangers do not work as good in humidity as they do in dry. So for instance, if you got 110 degrees in the desert, your radiator works far more efficiently than if it's 110 degrees and 88 or 90% humidity. It just works more efficient when it's dry. So I think this is about the best we'll be able to get out of the system. The whole system is stock, but it's all brand new parts, every bit of it. So let me get the bucket and get under here and open this petcock, and we'll see what it looks like. So I'll be right back. So I got the radiator to start draining, and look at that. See how that coolant is black? Now that is not oil in the coolant. What that is, that tells you right there that that Thermocure is working. It turns black as it reacts with the rust and gets rid of the rust in your engine block. Unfortunately, my radiator drain does not seem to want to drain real good, so I'm going to keep working at it, and I'll come back once I get this stuff drained out. So this antifreeze was about a year old, and you can see that's not oil in there. That is the Thermocure rust all suspended in the antifreeze now. So this thing has slowed down to a trickle, which is not surprising, because for some reason the drain on this radiator has always been like that. But I've got my hose, my flush hose, hooked up here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn that water on, and that will push water through the whole system and out here. Once we get a good flow going, Then we'll crank this thing up, see what happens. You definitely want to do this outside because it will make a mess. Alright, so the water is on. Hopefully I hooked that up the right way. Oh wait, I know what's wrong. We got to turn the right valve on. There we go. Now the water's on. Oh yeah, I hear it flowing. Yep, now we're starting to get more coming out of the drain down there. And once we get water coming out of here, we'll go ahead and crank this thing up. That'll get the water pump involved and should push all of the oh yeah, look at that nasty. Oh man, that is some nasty looking stuff right there. That evapor rust definitely did its job. We're going to let that run for a little bit till this water starts coming out clear, and then we'll go ahead and crank it up, and that'll push even more crap out of the system. So I'm gonna let this water run for a while, and I'll bring you back when we crank it up. Now the water's coming out. It's not totally clear yet, but we're gonna go ahead and crank this thing up and let it run. Grab the key here. Even more junk. So now I'm gonna let this run until that water comes out clear, and then we'll put the cleaner in. Okay, so the water started coming out clear finally. Took about a half an hour. So now I went ahead and closed the drain on the radiator and cut the water off going in, and now I'm going to let this thing warm up so that the thermostat opens, and then I'll cut the water back on to flush it some more. We'll be right back. So the motor is up to operating temperature now, and the thermostat has opened. So we're going to go ahead and turn the flush water back on, and that will flush out some more crap. Oh yeah, look at that. Might have to do that 2 or 3 times. So I'm going to do this back and forth with the thermostat opening and closing a couple of more times until I get clear water out, and then I'll come back and we'll put the cleaner in and do it. Okay, so I put the cleaner in there, that Prestone coolant system cleaner, filled it up with water, and I ran up to the parts store and back to get some antifreeze. And so now we're going to let this thing cool off enough where I can take the caps back off, and we're going to do another flush, and then drain everything, flush it again, drain everything, and then refill the coolant. So I'll be back once this thing cools off. Alright, it's still a little warm, but we got the drain cock open. We got the flushing hose hooked up again, so we're going to go ahead and flush this a couple of more times before we call it good. So let's get to work on that. Oh yeah. Pushing more rust out of it. That is awesome. So just like before, we'll flush it a couple of more times till it's clear, and then we'll get to putting antifreeze back in it. Alright, this thing finally got cool enough, so now we are flushing it once again. And we're going to do this for, I'm going to let this sit here and flush for probably 20 or 30 minutes. And then we will shut the water off, shut the Jeep off, let the radiator drain back out again, and we'll get ready to put the antifreeze back in. Alright, we have finally finished flushing, and you can see what's coming out of it now is nice and clear and clean. So we're going to let that radiator drain the rest of the way, and then we'll add the antifreeze. So I'll be right back. Alright y'all, so once the radiator finished draining, there was about a gallon and a half, a little less than a gallon and a half of water in the bucket, plus or minus whatever spilled and such. So I went ahead, I added 1 gallon of concentrate to the radiator already, and now I'm going to finish filling up with the 50/50, and then once I get it all the way filled up, and you can see I've got this jacked up so all the air bubbles will go up to the burp the system up to the radiator there, and we'll crank it up and top off the coolant once the thermostat opens. So I will continue adding coolant. Okay, so I've got the radiator filled back up. I used 1 gallon of concentrate, and that'll mix with the water that was left in the motor and the heater core, and about half a gallon of 50/50. And so I ran it until the thermostat opened, and topped it off, slapped the cap back on there, let it run a little bit, and now we're going to let it cool back off again. And keeping it jacked up like this, any air bubbles that were in the system will work their way up to here, and then we'll be able to pull this cap off once it's cold again and check the antifreeze again, and this will help to ensure that we don't have any air bubbles in the system. So once that's done, then we'll be done. And I went ahead now, since I've got everything pretty much done, I washed all of the antifreeze and crap off of the engine and the engine bay and the frame and everything else. That way, if we do have a leak, we'll be able to see it. We didn't have any leaks, and the whole reason I did this was mainly just to flush the radiator, because I knew the engine block had a bunch of rust in it. So I'm going to let this cool off for a minute, go get a drink of water, and then we'll top it right off again and set it back down on all fours and run it up and see what the temperature gets to. It's one of the hotter days of the year. It's over 100, so it ought to be plenty warm enough to give it a good check. So we'll be back with that. All right, so we got all the radiators all filled back up, everything's cleaned up, and this thing has been sitting here running for about 40 minutes, just idling. I revved it up a couple of times, but there's no breeze coming across it. And look at this. So that is sitting just a hair below 210. Now normally on a 100+ degree day, which it is right now, that thing would be sitting above 210, almost to that second tick mark. And going down the road, if you pull a hard hill or something, it'll go up between the tick mark over 210 and the next tick mark. So that Thermocure definitely did the trick. So I can definitely say, if you've got a motor that sat for a while before you got it, or you didn't do your maintenance and let the antifreeze sit in there for too long, this stuff right here, that can be your friend. If you got a lot of rust in your system, this stuff right here, you put it in there and use it and do it the way it says to, man, it will you'll definitely see an improvement getting all that rust out of there. So that's it for that. This is not a sponsored product, but like a lot of my videos, I don't care if they're sponsoring me or not. This stuff right here, if you need it, man, that's the stuff to get. That will get rid of the rust in your cooling system and make a serious improvement. Because the thing about it is, all that rust inside your engine block does not transfer heat efficiently. So you get all that out of there, it's going to work a whole lot better. That's it for this video. We'll see y'all in the next video. Y'all have a good one.